Hello and welcome to another edition of Tony Talks. It's been a while since we've been with you, and this edition is going to be slightly different this week. We're going to be covering 3 or 4 areas, topics in the financial markets, and I'm hoping that you'll get some interesting thoughts based on the comments between Tony and I. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Tony. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
Now, the oil price has risen quite dramatically recently, and I'd like your sort of feedback on what are the key reasons for that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Sean. I mean, we saw on Monday the price of a barrel of oil at just over $59 a barrel, which is the highest we've seen since July 2015. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think one of the reasons is that the OPEC cuts that were instigated some time ago, finally starting to take some effect. We're looking at 1.8 million barrels a day reduction in output. But also we've got some geopolitical factors coming into play here. The situation in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, for example, because obviously they had the vote for independence the other day. Turkey's not happy about that, and Turkey's threatening to cut the oil flows from that pipeline that runs through that region. Now that would, if that happened, that would reduce output further by 500,000 barrels a day. So pressure on supply. Also, demand is picking up, especially in places like China. So things are looking pretty good right now for the oil price. The big question, of course, is how long can it last?
Further to that, there is a build-up of tension between the United States and North Korea. How much of this rise in the oil price do you think may be speculation from people thinking that there's going to be deployment of ships and air power towards North Korea and therefore a much greater demand for certain fuel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously any threat of military action by either North Korea or the United States is going to have an impact on the oil price, but also on other markets as well. You know, so for example, the general stock markets, which have been trading, globally at quite high, in fact, all-time highs. You know, are we due a correction, or do we have further to run? But certainly things like the talk between the North Korean leader and the US president won't help that.
Following on from your comment about a possible correction, a lot of analysts believe that markets correct roughly every 8 years or so, and the last time we had a correction was in 2008. What do you think investors should be doing now, given that markets are at an all-time high and we're already through the 8-year period?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, with all what's going on, in geopolitical and North Korea and all the rest of it, markets continue to rise. And the economic data coming out of the United States is still very positive. However, a savvy investor may well think that. He may well think, well, we're at the top of the market. Can this continue? We don't know. If we knew the answers to that, we'd all be very, very rich people, But maybe, to be prudent, it might well make sense to moving some of your assets into a solution that is more conservative, is more balanced, is not just in one asset class.
I was pleasantly surprised at the news from Saudi Arabia that the law has been loosened and the authorities have been given notice to implement the law that women can now drive in Saudi Arabia, and that ban has been lifted. What do you think the implications are of this going forward in Saudi Arabia?
I think it's got massive implications. This has been talked about a long time, but it's never actually happened. Now, of course, part of the Saudi Arabian Vision 2030, and one of the objectives of that is to have more women in the workplace, and of course, allowing women to drive goes a long way to helping that. We need to remember that there's a huge part of the Saudi Arabian economy which is not utilised at the moment, and that's women in the job sector. I think this will go a long way to addressing that.
Finally, turning to the aviation sector, we've heard announcements between Bombardier and Boeing. Explain to us, what is really going on in that sector at the moment?
Okay, so what we have is the Canadian plane maker Bombardier, who had this massive order that Delta are going to be buying their C-Series plane. Now, Boeing not happy about this. A competitor Traditionally, of course, the American market has been dominated by Boeing. So Boeing have gone to the courts in the United States, and effectively the courts have agreed with them, and there's going to be a 219% tariff on this plane order for Delta. So currently it's going through the courts and all the rest of it, or I'm sure it will be doing. But this has got massive implications for jobs, obviously for Bombardier, because it doesn't just operate in Canada, it operates, for example, in Northern Ireland. 1,000 jobs depend on this new plane. But the C-Series is very much seen as a competitor to Boeing, and Boeing don't like it.